All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming out to tonight's conversation on gap year. Um, I want to basically do an overview of what it is and sort of get to the crux of why we here in NC and JSU, in our community, we are tremendous, tremendous advocates for gap year. We advocate, we highlight it, we raise a ton of money, and we try to bring down all barriers to be able to give kids the opportunity and the gift of what a gap year is. Now, I know that, again, conventionally, that there's a lot of parents out there that when they hear the talk of gap year or it's introduced to them, typically in a kid's senior year, usually it's met with a lot of hesitation, rightfully so. If there's something that's non-conventional out there, there's something that goes sort of against the current or something that you're not used to, obviously you should come at it with a bit of skepticism and say, what is this and what are you pitching me and what is it that you're trying to do? I hope to try to bring down some of those misconceptions or help people become a little bit more warm and friendly to the idea of a gap year and why essentially we advocate for it to the highest degree. Um, what we as a community, we have a lot of different values in terms of what we try to build. And one of those values is trying to help teens set themselves up for their future. Not just for their Jewish future, but also in terms of their own character and their own standing within themselves. On our summer program, TJJ, one of the three main goals that we try to accomplish is character development and help and allow kids to be able to grow, come out of their comfort zone, and become the best they can be. And gap year becomes a almost an essential part of that journey, at least in our eyes. The world we live in has changed. It is very, very different than it was not even 30 years ago. In 2007, everything changed. I saw a fascinating study that showed the mental health decline begin, the epidemic amongst the youth when it comes to mental health beginning in 2007. And that was the year that I graduated high school. And the question was, all right, what happened in the year 2007 that caused the entire world to sort of change and transform into the anxious generation in which we find ourselves today? And lo and behold, you'll find that the iPhone was the thing that was released in 2007. Um, Correlation? I think not. Let's take a little look at it. Back in the day, going straight to university was the ticket to prosperity in America. It was the way to higher education. It was the way to get out of sort of the lowest of the working class, the rugged, paycheck to paycheck 9 to 5, and be able to, have aspirations beyond to set yourself up for a strong financial, successful future. And what it's turned into is become, a society in which having a college degree just becomes an automatic staple. Where if you look at the statistics of people who get bachelor's degrees, many of them, many of them, don't even use the degree in which they went to school for. It sort of has become some sort of just the way, the derech, as we say, the direction of which in which the society runs and operates, and people will follow into that derech. And there's a reason for it as well. There's a reason why it's been set up that way. But we live in a different world today where that's not the only way to be prosperous. While higher education and education in general is extremely important, there is something that is even more important and more essential before even getting to that conversation. And that's sort of the case, that I want to make. People who are born before the year 1985 have a very, very difficult time. Again, I'm just speaking from my experience. I deal with hundreds, if not thousands, of kids every single year. People who were born before 1985 have a very difficult time understanding today's teenager. Today's teenager is a very different teenager than they were, again, tens of years ago. And there is a major disconnect because it's very hard to understand what it is about today's teens. And again, being around them so frequently, you sort of start to pick up on certain things. So, gap year programs were created at the time. The phenomenon started in the 60s. The gap year movement started as a way to sort of alleviate some of the social and societal pressures that were created in which the world in which they lived up in. And baby boomers, if at the time after World War II, it was actually very fascinating that the kids, it wasn't those who were, if you were alive during World War II, every single person was totally consumed by what was going on in the war. If either you had a direct family member who was drafted or you had a neighbor, everybody knew somebody who was on a base or overseas. That was just what it was. Everybody in that generation, it was almost obsessive because that was the main thing. That was just, it was baked into the society of it. And what you found amongst their kids were that their kids were grown up with, constantly being talked about and constantly being like, it was so baked into the culture that they couldn't relate or understand it, that they needed a break. And by the time they turned 18 years old, you saw in the 60s, a lot of those kids were just like, you know what, I need to get away from all that talk. And you got sort of the hippie movement. People went out and they were very much into love and peace. And it was sort of like a reaction to everything that was the history behind it is actually very, very fascinating. We take for granted that the way that we grow up and the things that are happening in the world really shape us and shape our way of thinking. That stuff is not passed down to our children. I cringe, really. I was in seventh grade during 9/11, and when it finally hit me and dawned on me that a lot of my students weren't actually alive for that event. And that was so much, in those years, there was so much from 2001 to 2004, it was everything. When you get to a time, when your kids get to a time where there'll be kids who are born in the post-COVID era who cannot relate to what happened in 2020, right? There's a major, major disconnect from it. So even though the reasons for why, society has changed, the concept of gap year has remained the same, which is a chance to be able to alleviate oneself from the predominant culture and the societal current in which a person grows up in. So you have to sort of take a look. What is it that the average American teenager is growing up with and is consumed with that could have either a positive but can have a very negative effect. And I think that that's what we're seeing in large mass. And again, if you have children who are teenagers, you can relate to this. Let's look at American society for a second. American society, right, what teens struggle with today is they struggle with tremendous, again, mental health is a tremendous spectrum, but kids struggle very, very much with not only with mental health, but they struggle with their own self-esteem, with their insecurity. Kids feel very, very insecure. I'll just highlight some things that are common sense to a teenager that a parent might not understand. The biggest pursuit, and it's regardless, every kid will say, "Oh, I'm this way. I don't care about this. I don't care." Every kid cares about this. The most important thing to them to go anywhere is who's going. Because the scariest thing in the world is the idea of going somewhere. Now, in the context of what I do, it's going to an event, right? I'm a recruiter. So I try to recruit kids to come to a Shabbaton, to come to an event, come in a summer program. The scariest thing doesn't matter if it's a popular kid or it's the biggest loser. They're all terrified of the exact same thing, which is, God forbid, there will be a moment that I will be alone. And this consumes them and it plagues them because we live in a society where every kid grows up feeling super alone, even though you have social media that makes us feel all connected. That kids are vying for the approval of millions of strangers in the pursuit of wanting to go viral because they need the approval, the external approval from everyone out there in the world who's going to like their photo versus the people in their inner circle, their parents, their closest friends, their teachers, getting their approval. They will pass up on that almost immediately in the pursuit of going viral. And it doesn't matter which kid, like, a kid will say, like, oh, I don't care about going viral, being famous. It is what they all yearn for, which is this sort of recognition, external recognition, because they live, within the realms of their social media. This is wild. If a girl, mostly you'll see this with girls, if they post a picture on Instagram and they don't get enough likes within a certain time frame, they will remove the picture and take it down. It might sound crazy to you, but that's in the world we live in. Kids have broken self-esteems. And the reason is because, again, external versus internal. Person's self-esteem and their own security as they're being developed has to come from within them. But unfortunately, everything comes from the external world and what they're dealing with. Kids don't want to feel alone. Kids don't want to be alone with themselves. One of the scariest things that they can possibly do, right? And this is, again, I do interviews. I do over 100 interviews in person, over an hour, recruiting for TJJ for my program. And kids are terrified for an interview. And it's me. And I'm like, I had a kid even text me one time saying, like, do you think we could do our interview over text? I was like, no, no, we can't. And I asked them, what are you so scared about? The ones who are really nervous, like, you're really nervous. You're having an interview. You're 15 years old. How many interviews have you possibly gone in your life? What are you so nervous about? What they're nervous about, right? What we get to is they're nervous because there isn't a filter. They can't moderate. They're exposed. I ask them a question, they need to answer about themselves. And there's no filter. There's no way for them to mediate or moderate or have a buffer zone. And the scariest thing for them is for them to be exposed of who I really am and put that out there without having any sort of ability to be able to control that process. And that's a terrible thing. And again, that leads to why people are not confident in the things that they do and in their schoolwork. And it breeds to that. There is a huge problem today when it comes to self-esteem and when it comes to insecurity. Now, we all know that the home is probably the most essential and most valuable institution in a child's life is their home. That is the place where ideally they are meant to learn their values. That is where they are to learn right versus wrong and their hashkafa, their philosophy, their outlook on life. But as great as a home is, and again, that's the goal, core values are not genetic. Just because parents feel very strongly about X, Y, and Z does not mean that those are going to be genetically passed down to their children and their children is going to be raised with this sense of if you're lucky, we can't control our kids, but if you're lucky, they'll grow up with the same sense of values in terms of their Judaism, in terms of their outlook. But nothing is guaranteed for sure. And if you think about it, the amount of time that they have interacting in a meaningful way with their parents vis-a-vis social media, one can really make the case, which is why Taylor Swift probably has more followers than important political leaders or inspiring individuals, is pop culture is the most dominant influence in a kid's life. Pop culture, what they see on social media, that is, right, you have to fight. They're getting, I mean, just look at kids' screen time. Now, there's a reason, by the way, why kids are so totally obsessed with screen time and losing themselves in social media. And it all relates down to this, right? If I am uncomfortable with myself, then I want to find any sort of distraction that I can. And again, you open up any kid's iPhone, and there's an app that shows you how much screen time on which specific app. The most that I've seen, it's scary, but the most that I've seen, I had a girl show me in the summer that her daily average of TikTok was 13 and a half hours a day. And I'm like thinking, how's that possible? Like you gotta sleep at some point. And they explained to me how they just have it on all day. They're just they're flipping through no matter what they're doing. Everything they're doing, it's just on next to them. American society is very fast paced. It loves immediate gratification, which is a problem when it comes to delayed gratification, right? When you're the 3-year-old, you ever know the marshmallow test in psychology? You give the child a marshmallow, you tell them to wait. We want our children to learn, we want our students to learn about delayed gratification, that putting in hard work will pay off. But we live in a society where all of our technological innovation and all of everything that's invested in is all about how can we get something faster, quicker, and more convenient. And again, it's huge. I mean, air conditioning is great. Nobody wants to go back to the days where, when we had to like, go down to the well to get running water. Of course, we love the fact that America is so affluent and has all these things. But in terms of a value and to compromise on what hard work is, that's not a good thing. So kids don't have time to stop and do anything. Their time is constantly, their attention span is shot, it's destroyed, again, from social media. It's very hard for the kid to actually sit and focus on anything. You ask a kid to practice meditation, and it's the funniest thing because they don't know what they're doing, right? To sit there quietly alone in silence for 2 minutes is like the most awkward, uncomfortable thing in the entire world because they're with themselves. And that's sort of that's really, really at the crux of the issue is that a kid feeling comfortable with themselves, getting to know themselves, feeling good about themselves, right? The relationship, and this is really where you see it the most. If a person is uncomfortable with being with themselves, then they need to fill that void. Every person, every human being, right? There's this intrinsic need to matter, and you need to fill your cup with something with meaning. You can't just, you have to either distract yourself or you need to fill it with something else. So if a person wants to distract themselves, they'll go to social media, right? They'll pound Netflix into oblivion. It's unbelievable, right? I have no time. There's no time to do anything. And then they'll put like on their status, like, I just finished binge watching like all seasons of Game of Thrones this in 1 week. Do you have something else for me? How do you watch 26 hours of Netflix in a day? I don't know, but certain kids have the ability to do that. Now, besides distraction, when a kid wants to fill their cup, what do they fill their cup with? They'll fill it with something that is productive. And more often than not, that cup is going to be filled by academics. Academics is a beautiful thing. It is where we learn how to function in society. It is where we get educated to be able to do great things in life. But all good things could also, if overdone, they can have a very detrimental effect. Now, there is ridiculous amounts of research that shows that mental health issues and a person's own relationship with themselves and their emotional wellness, the issues with it get exasperated by the amount of academic pressure. And I'm on the front line, so I'm seeing it all the time. You should never have a 15-year-old girl ripping out her hair because she thinks that if she fails her math test, she's going to die. That is an irrational fear. It's nonsense. But again, through the system of believing and the things that kids will say to you in terms of the unhealthy relationship that they have with their academics institutions, it's a problem. And sometimes, more often than not, they sabotage the actual work in school because of the craziness of the perspective that they have with these academics. And that's something, again, something that's very, 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 very scary. Different thoughts, different ways of thinking in the United States have made their ways into the deepest echelons of a kid's mind, and they have these false beliefs as their core values. Another example of this is that, again, that I need to make money because God forbid I'm going to be poor on the street or some such nonsense like that. We live in the United States, which is the most affluent, most richest and prosperous country in the history of humanity, thank God, and we're very fortunate to be able to live here in a land that has so much opportunity. And yet there is this weird fear among kids that like if they don't do well and they don't make a lot of money, they're going to starve on the street. And I proceeded to ask them, I said, do you know anybody who is starving on the street? Like, can you name anybody who that, is there anyone in your neighbor, like in your community that you know of? And again, people struggle, but anyone that can't find food or doesn't have shelter over their homes. And then you get into the conversation, and it's what I'm in the pursuit of. I'm in the pursuit of comfortable, comfortable to not experience any sort of pain, right? That if I can't pay my bills and I'm not, I have to be comfortable. And then we try to define what comfort really looks like, right? What does comfort mean? And then you break it down. It's like, okay, how many bedrooms equals comfort? How many cars equals comfort? How many the ability to do what? Comfort can be a negative thing when it comes to growth. Obviously, you want to have the means to be able to pay and not have to worry about the things on the bottom, the essentials in life. If I'm struggling to pay for food, to put food on the table or to pay rent, then yes, I'm not going to be able to focus my time on the things that really matter in life, like family, like community, like God. I don't have time for those things because I'm so focused on just trying to put food on the table. So obviously that's really important. But again, the unhealthy nature of understanding this fear as if like I need to do the best or else. Now there's a lot of problems I can really go at the academic system and how it goes up the line in terms of a lot of top-down standardized testing and things like that. But what the point that I want to get at to specifically is that the concept and the basically the outlook in life that who you are is more important than what you do. There are things in life we control and we always have to try to do our best and set ourselves up for success, but there are things that are outside of our control. The one thing that is always in our control is the type of people that we are, the type of spouses we are, the type of parents we are, the type of character traits that we develop ourselves to have and to be. Those things are far more important than what you do. How do I know this? How does society know this? If you go to any cemetery, you will not find tombstones that say, here lies a great doctor, here lies a great lawyer, here lies a great dentist. You will see on the tombstones that saying, here lies a brother, a father, a husband, a wife, etc. Because at the end of the day, we know what's so important in life, and yet we spend, or the kids spend, 95% of their pursuit in the pursuit of what they do and not who they are. In fact, what you do should be a reflection of yourself. But it's a lot of pressure for a kid to figure out exactly what they are to be at the age of 16, 17, and 18 years old. What is a gap year? A gap year is the opportunity to be able to take a step out of the cultural norms of society, the craziness of it, and actually take a moment to try to figure out a few things about yourself, trying to figure out who you are, what strengths you were given, right? It's unbelievable. Two of the questions I ask in the TJ interview. One is, name three things you love about yourself and three things that you want to improve about yourself. And it's very fascinating to see the difference in which kids struggle with which type of question. But at the end of the day, the healthy thing is that a kid really knows what their strengths are and what their weaknesses are. And they have a game plan how to address those things, how to amplify their strengths, to use those strengths, right? If you're a very influential person and you're somebody who loves people and you get your self-satisfaction by being involved in a team and all that stuff, then maybe being an accountant, even if you come from a family of accountants, is really just not the thing that you should be doing, right? If you're someone that struggles with academics and you come from a family of doctors and you have a really hard time doing school, then maybe trade school is the answer. Maybe going to medical school is not the answer, right? To have a kid be forced into a mold that doesn't fit them can really have a disastrous effect on them. A kid needs to know who they are. They need to build themselves up. They need to build up their self-esteem, their self-confidence. And what a gap year is a chance to take a break. Again, there's this like craziness of like, oh, you can't take a break. Why are we always rushing to get everywhere? That's another symptom of American culture, which is I gotta get there ASAP. If I'm there, I'm behind the next person. Take a moment, take a breath, take a gap year, figure out what your core values are. Because, like I said, core values are not genetic. They don't get passed down just because your parents are who they are. You do your best, but every kid needs to choose their core values for themselves. And where can they do that? If a kid doesn't have a good sense of self and core values and they go to a major college campus university, you have to know that the people filling their heads with moral issues, you sit in a math class and you're going to hear things about your morality from your math professor. The last thing you need is for a kid to not have a good, solid foundation before they enter the university space, that they don't know who they are. There is a reason why we see, again, I work in outreach, the number one environment to rip away and to totally water down Jewish values is college campus universities. Now, caveat obviously is we live in the great state of Florida that has unbelievable universities here, and things are better. Things are better in our universities, places like UF, than they are in some of these Ivy Leagues or these places up in the Northeast, et cetera, as you can imagine. But a kid should really, before stepping onto the campus, the idea of like college is going to help you figure out what you want to do, maybe, but it won't help you necessarily figure out who you are. These gap year programs are there to be able to set a person up in a couple of ways. Number one is to have conversations, to have no pressure, no academic pressure, a chance to be able to have conversations and develop your thoughts and your core values. What do I want to be? Where do I want to go? Having a destination before I have direction. A person goes and they don't have a destination yet, then any way you turn in life is going to end you up there. I have plenty of students, again, just looking at my students who have gone to what I call college year, freshman year of college, I call 13th grade. Call it 13th grade because it's just a continuation of school. You've been in a classroom every single day since you were left diapers. Maybe something positive can happen if you step out of the classroom for 5 seconds. In the summer, they do that. Kids have incredible summers when they come out to Israel, they have a great time, and they go right back to the classroom. You take a year outside of the classroom to develop. And again, it doesn't, obviously, we're Jewish, so the land of Israel and the talk of yeshivas and seminaries come to the table for sure. But even if you're not Jewish, to take a year traveling Europe or to join and volunteer at the Red Cross or whatever it is, why do we go to Israel? Because we're Jewish and we want to go to institutions that are also teaching our values, right? Teaching the core values of, what it is to be a Jew, talking about family values, understanding how to live a life, where spirituality is connected into our pursuits, that we don't lose perspective of things, for sure. For sure. But it's valuable to anyone. It's valuable to any kid. What we see is that the kids that come back from gap years are far more mature because again, how do you define maturity? Just because, oh, I went to the college campus and I'm still whatever. Maturity is how a person manages their own time. It's how they develop to have a sense of how do I spend my time most productively. We see tremendous amount of maturity when it comes back from students who come take a gap year. There is a chance to plan, to figure out, hey, what are my strengths and my weaknesses? What are my passions in life? How can I take my passions and turn them into a way to be able to actually make money through a career? Right? Who's the person I want to marry? I'll tell you what, if you don't know yourself and your core values, how can you possibly know which person to marry, which areas I'm going to be looking in, which communities I want to live in, right? The type of children I want to raise. That's not something to figure out as you go. That's something to set yourself up for. And you're not doomed if you don't go. It's just an investment that a person can set themselves up for success beforehand and developing their core values. Happens to be that a lot of colleges, a lot of the major universities, Georgetown, NYU, even UF, famously the dean of Harvard, they all advocate for a gap year. They actually give precedence to kids who do take a gap year. I think FSU actually pays, not the gap years that we work with, but the ones that they have a partnership with, they actually give students $5,000 to take a gap year before coming. Why? Because, and you can Google it, the advantages of taking a gap year. Kids that take gap years that go to major universities all overperform academically than kids that go directly to universities. Those are the statistics, and it's not shocking why. When you have somebody who comes back more mature, more put together, in a better place, they're obviously going to perform a lot better. I'll close by saying that's my story in a nutshell. I'm somebody who, the classroom did not work for me because I didn't never had teachers who cared enough to put in their time and effort to figure out in my learning style. So I left high school. I dropped out of high school, actually. I never finished high school, but I left high school thinking to myself that to some degree that I was a failure. Thank God I had a mentor who pitched and convinced me to take a gap year. I spent 2 years in Israel, studying and learning about myself. I came back to America as a totally changed person. I realized that success in life is not the determination of the outcome of others and what people tell you, right? So many kids think that their worth in life is determined by some college advisor who sits in a back room and makes $44,000 a year, who reads their essay that they didn't even write. That person has more control of their self-esteem than the kid themselves. And that is absolutely unacceptable. Every kid has to know that they're capable of doing anything in the entire world that they want to do if they so choose it. So even though I thought I would never ever thrive or succeed in a classroom, I came back. I proceeded to get 3 college degrees. I graduated summa cum laude with my master's degree in psychological education. And I'm a living proof and product of it that going out there and investing in yourself is the best investment you can possibly make in life. When you invest in yourself to build a strong foundation and feel good about who you are and know what your worth is, then you can come back in the world and you can conquer almost anything in the entire world. And that's some of the reasons why I'm a tremendous advocate for gap years. Um, and I have here on, and again, in the pursuit of that, I want to toss the baton over to Aviel. Aviel is hired and works his main focus here in the NCSY community is he is our senior specialist. He has really two jobs. One that in the alumni division is to make sure that our seniors, when they graduate out, have opportunities and somebody who's there to provide them with the resources and the virtual hand-holding to allow kids to be able to transition into the next stage. What that means is, on the one hand, for gap years, for sure, we have great relationships with a lot of the gap years. We take a senior Israel trip to Israel to check them out, to understand the process, the benefits, and also our alumni who don't take a gap year and go to college campuses to make sure there's a community maintained amongst them, to connect them with the different Jewish organizations on campus, and to make sure that they still have a lifeline with us. So that's what Aviel does. That's his focus. He's our senior specialist, and he's here to just talk a little bit about the pros, cons, and the resources that we provide, and how we try to make sure that every student can be set up for success. And when your children are seniors, he's going to be the one to be in touch with, to walk you through and answer any of the questions. So with that, I will hand it over to Sir Aviel.
Thank you so much, Avi. So, to build off everything that Avi was saying, I just wanted to cover a handful of practical points and a few different ways that I can serve as a resource for you guys. So, obviously, one of the main pieces of Gap Year is that of the financial piece. With everything, in the last couple of years, we see that there is a steady increase in terms of prices. But that being said, we are still very determined to make sure that each teen who seeks out this opportunity to go on a gap year will be able to do so. We want to try and facilitate that, even if there may be some sort of, financial challenges. So for anyone who is thinking about a gap year and is worried about the financial piece, you should definitely be in touch. There are many scholarship opportunities, many organizations that we work with. And although it is for many of the programs a pretty, significant price tag, Baruch Hashem, thank God we have never had a kid not go to yeshiva or seminary because of the financials. Again, via all the different scholarships and, through our relationships with yeshivas and seminaries, we're always able to find a way to make it work. And every year, as all the different scholarship organizations put out their applications, I always put together a form that has every single scholarship application walking you through exactly how to apply and the due dates. And that's a resource that comes out on a yearly basis for all of your help. Another piece, as Avi mentioned, gap year is not something that we're promoting over college. It's something to help with college. Many people like to call it a bridge year because it's a year that helps one transition from high school to college. And there are many different pieces that may come along, transferring credits, college deferment. Every college has a different policy when it comes to the credits and also to how to defer. So that is also something that everyone is able to reach out in regards to, and I'm more than happy to help with. Another thing is that if your teen does decide that they want to go on a gap year, there is the big question of where should they go? What type of environment would make the most sense for them? Are they someone that wants a smaller group? Are they someone that would like a bigger group? Do they need, more one-on-one relationships with teachers and mentors? Are they looking for a more intellectual style when it comes to learning, or are they looking, to build from the basics? Depending on what they're looking for and what they need, there is definitely a place for everybody. We work with a number of both yeshivas on the boys' side and seminaries on the girls' side that range in terms of what they're able to offer. And that's another piece that I can definitely assist with. Within that, for us, as it was, very clearly mentioned by Avi, we are very, very strong about advocating for gap year because we believe that this is the best decision. We've seen it time and time again over the years that we have worked, and in terms of us, we are on the same team as you, the parents. We would like to see your teen's success. And one of the ways that we help create that, apart from actually, helping them get to the program themselves and dealing with everything leading up to the program, is that every single yeshiva and seminary that we work with, which, as I mentioned before, is quite a diverse range. We have staff members in those yeshivas and seminaries that we have very strong relationships with, and they make sure that the teens that come from Southern NCSY, are never in a position where they could fall through the cracks. If someone's struggling with something, if someone needs some extra help or some extra attention, whatever that may look like, whether it's a diet thing or a mental health thing, whatever it is, we do have different members in the different schools that we do have those relationships with, and we do that, and we leverage sort of our relationships to make sure that every teen is as successful as possible. So it's not like we're just sending them and then forgetting about them. We're there for the entire year, the second year, whatever it is, and we make sure that we have people on the ground who are also keeping an eye out and ensuring their success. And then, with that, there are other questions that could potentially come up when it comes to a gap year, whatever it may be. I am a resource for all things gap year, and I just want to, sort of mention that. And that if anyone has any questions, again, whether it be financial, whether it have to do with college, where to go, or how to be successful, all of those questions, I am, again, always here for any of that. And everyone should feel comfortable and should definitely not hesitate to reach out when it comes to all things gap year. So I believe with that, we'll open up the floor to any questions before we end.
Yeah, I have a question. What do
Sure.
you have coming up next year for the alumni who are on some of the college campuses in Florida, some of the former kids from the program?
Right. So in terms of next year, we are developing a brand new alumni track to help support the alumni that are in campuses, have some sort of programming before everyone actually goes off to college to help build out that community. And then, we have different ideas that are floating around, potentially visiting campuses, doing Shabbatonim, maybe even a birthright mission with the different teams that are on college campuses, because we recognize that college can sometimes be a challenging place. And, we want to make sure that whichever direction a person goes, whether it be gap year or whether it be directly to college, that they have a support system, that support system from NCSY doesn't just disappear. And we're looking to sort of revamp our alumni programming and develop that to, again, create sort of, that community and support that they had throughout high school.
I'm excited. Can I come?
Sure.
Okay.
How many type of seminary you guys working with to be able to direct the kids to go to?
Yeah, so in terms of the seminaries, right now there are five main places that we work with: Me'orot, Midrashet Tehillah, Ber Miriam, Machon Mayan, and which is number five, Sharfman's. Those are the five.
Jerusalem?
Yeah. All of those except for Machon Mayan are in Yerushalayim. Ber Miriam and Midreshet Tehillah are in Har Nof, and Me'orot and Sharfman's are, in different places in Yerushalayim. Machon Mayan, I think, is in Givat Shaul, right? Givat Washington.
About Washington, yeah.
By Washington. But the other four are all in Yerushalayim. So that is in terms of the seminaries, and in terms of the yeshivas, we work with Derech Or Sameach, Netiv Aryeh, Mevaseret Zion, and Esha Torah. All of these places historically have taken our teens who come from NCSY backgrounds, so they know how to deal with someone who maybe doesn't have the same foundation that a average person going on gap year would. And again, we do have those staff members in each of those schools who make sure to watch out for our teens, and also our relationships with the schools allow for them to be a little bit more helpful when it comes to the financial aspects as well.
Right. That's an important point to make, is that when we say work with, we'll work with anybody. That we right place for right student for sure. When we say work, it means that we've developed those relationships and we have sort of those added benefits and bonuses by working with those institutions, and they're best, what we found, they're most fit and suitable to deal with kids who come from either a public school background or not a strong background, or need a little bit more of a sense of community. But we've had students that gone across the gamut. There's a lot of different programs. And of course, and Avio helps with that as well, getting in touch with them. We have students that gone straight to the army. We have students that have even gone to college in Israel, not even on gap year programs, but to college in Israel. So no matter where, obviously there's places that we work with in preference, but we help anyone and anyone, like in whatever it is that's right for them.
My other question is, how many of those kids that you guys helped or trained or basically going to this kind of program from the past?
Meaning, like, how many kids a year go to yeshiva and seminary from NCSY?
Correct.
So the last couple of years, Baruch Hashem, with the help of the different organizations that we work with in terms of making things more financially feasible, we're in around the 25 to 30 range of NCSY public school teens going to yeshiva and seminary, which I believe is the most in the country in terms of NCSY.
That's amazing. That's very nice. Are they stick together? Do you guys follow up? Do you guys know that they're like, how they do it?
Yeah, so I don't know. Avi, you can correct me if you're wrong. You've been doing this a little bit longer than I have, but I am yet to hear that somebody had a negative experience in gap year. Some people will take more out of it than others, that's for sure. But I don't recall anyone who has ever come back and said, like, I really had a negative experience, like I wouldn't do it again. In general, they do stick together. You'll usually have between 2 and 5 kids go to each place. We usually do send them in bunches. I don't believe that there is, at least as long as I've worked here, I don't think that there's been a year where there's like been only one kid who has gone to one place. Usually, you'll have a handful of kids go to each place. And the follow-up, as Avi had mentioned, the follow-up is definitely there in 2 ways. One, on a personal level, that we're reaching out and we're checking in and making sure that they're doing well. And second, via the different teachers in the yeshivas and seminaries, whom we have good relationships with, and sort of when we send our teens there, they know that they're coming from Southern NCSY, and they know that generally Southern NCSY sends the best teens. That's just how it's been historically. Usually, our teens are really the top of the different yeshivas and seminaries, and therefore, they're willing to go all out and make sure that they are, that they're being successful. And for example, just one thing, in terms of follow-up, we will do this trip that we have upcoming in February. For the seniors, we go to Israel for a week to look at yeshivas and seminaries, so they can have a sort of better understanding of what would be best for them and where they would like to go. We run a couple of reunions, we check in with everybody. So there definitely is a tremendous amount of follow-up, both from Florida and America, and also on the ground in Israel.
we try to build a cohort beforehand, as in like through the group chat of the seniors, and that's like, out of 120 or so seniors. So um, try to get a community of them. And typically, like, in August, we'll have like a dinner, like a send-off dinner. And then there's a group chat out there. So people stay connected in different schools and they have that sense of community. And again, the schools themselves are always in touch, sometimes a little bit, too much, but I find myself involved in like conversations with the parents or whatever it is, that someone's having a issue with rooming or someone's having an issue with whatever it is, that the communication from a lot of these places are great. And that's why we choose to partner with them.
That's amazing. You guys doing an amazing job.
And
How do we find out about all the finance for this coming year in order to be prepared in advance? And when you say you're going on February, you mean with those who's going next year to do a seminary or yeshiva, right?
Right. Right, exactly. So in terms of the we've been running this trip. This year is going to be the third year, but Bezrat Hashem, we're leaving in 2 weeks, and it is for seniors. It's for those that are going the next year, and we intend to run that trip as long as we can. We partner with an organization called Olami, which is very, very helpful in terms of offering a very, very subsidized price for everyone to be able to make it. Again, because we do believe in this cause, and we do believe that everyone should have the opportunity to be able to see which place makes the most sense for them. So that's in terms of the trip. In terms of the financial pieces, so the truth is, it really starts around January, February time of your senior year, for the main reason that the scholarship applications won't even let you submit an application until you have an acceptance letter from the yeshiva and seminary, yeshiva or seminary that you plan on going to. So once we go on our trip and the team figures out where they'd like to go, they apply, they get accepted, and then at that point, I am sort of the resource to help guide them through the different scholarship opportunities. Again, it starts a little bit later in the year just because you do need that acceptance letter. But for those parents that are on top of it and teams that are on top of it, you really are able to sort of come away generally. Again, there's certain factors that it's dependent upon, but at the very least, they come away with some somewhat significant amount in scholarships.
Great. Thank you so much.
Of course.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Aviel. And again, we are always finding new ways to create opportunities for people to have experiences and meet people. I do want to add, I think it's worth mentioning also, 90% of our advisor team, which are like, again, the college age role models that we bring in to staff our programs, 90% of them come off of gap year programs. It's probably even higher than that. But from this past summer, even our entire staff were all alumni from the program, from TJJ, and all gap year alumni as well. In terms of finding awesome role models, we tend to see a trend over there. So,
Aviel, may I ask another question?
Yeah.
Last one. Sorry for all the questions.
No, you're good.
It's just me and Cindy, so I'm allowing myself. She doesn't ask anything, so I'm asking for both of us. My next question will be, if my daughter decides that she wants to go to this program, obviously, if she's planning to come back after a year to study in a college over here, she has to have everything prepared and ready. So, kind of, when is this gap year start? As summer starts next year for her, finishing 12th grade next year. So from summer, and then she stays in Israel for that seminary until basically the following year at college.
So it runs the same way sort of that a college year does. It runs from late August, September time until around June. So you still have the full summer before and in between college. And that's pretty much.
And the break is the Jewish holidays, or the break is
Yeah. So they have
just like in Israel.
They have off during the Chagim. Generally, when people fly back is during Pesach. That's usually when people will fly back. But yeah, they'll have off, pretty much the entire month of Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot. Then they'll have a short break for Hanukkah, and then Pesach's like the big break. That's usually when everyone comes back home to America, and then they'll go back after Pesach until mid-June.
I do wanted to tell you that if you can apply to a college and then defer and like tell them my son or daughter is going for a year and they'll hold your spot.
Right.
But you usually like apply like as if they would be entering in August. And then once they get admitted and you decide on the college, then you can tell them, we decided to do a gap year, and then the college usually holds your spot.
Right. We've never had a problem with deferment, and there have even been some cases where a person has decided that they want to go to gap year, in June or July, and again, almost every time I believe the college was okay with them deferring, because as Avi mentioned, the colleges are a fan of the idea of gap year in general, and they see that the students that go on a gap year are more successful, so usually they don't have a problem with the deferment.
We had a girl 2 years ago. She was in her first week at Hofstra University. She called up and she's just like, "What did I do?" I'm like, I'm like, can't be here and whatever." And she went to Israel after her first week in college and went for the year and came back and went back to university. So yeah, it's a lot easier that way.
That's great intel. Thank you so much, Cindy and Aviel.
All right. With that, we'll end the recording.